Good morning. Good morning. And welcome to Mayor Vincent C. Gray's bi-weekly City Hall press briefing, and happy holidays to everybody. I'm Doxy McCoy from the Mayor's Office of Communications. We're in what's called the Mayor's Ceremonial Office at the Wilson Building because in a few minutes he will sign the first source reform bill designed to get district residents back to work. But first I have a few announcements, and please, the press, refer to your folders for more details on the items I will talk about. First, congratulations to D.C. Public Librarian Venetia V. Dempson for receiving the prestigious Carnegie Corporation of New York and New York Times I Love My Librarian Award. Ms. Dempson is one of 10 librarians nationwide and the first in the region to receive this annual award. Recently, she and other awardees were recognized at a ceremony in New York hosted by the New York Times. Nominations were open to librarians working in public libraries, schools, and universities all over the country. Ms. Dempson is head of the D.C. Public Library's Adaptive Services Division, which helps deaf and visually impaired people use library services. Chief Librarian of the District of Columbia, Jeannie Cooper, says Venetia brings an unparalleled passion to her work as an advocate for deaf, visually impaired, and physically disabled users. Mayor Gray sends his congratulations to Ms. Dempson. For the second announcement, this is a reminder for DCPS middle and high school students and parents that they must get a DC-1 card from their school and go online to apply for benefits from the school transit subsidy program by January 1st. The program provides reduced fares for district students who use Metrobus, subway, or DC Circulator to travel to and from school, and it's managed by the District Department of Transportation and District of Columbia Public Schools. The program has changed, so that's why the announcement is going out to students to please go online and apply for your benefits before January 1st when school starts. The sign-up for lower grades begins January 16th. For more information, parents and families should go to dc1card.dc.gov or call 311. Finally, the Metropolitan Police Department has several tips and warnings for residents to heed to keep safe during the holiday and shopping season. There are tips in the folders for press to please circulate among your viewers and readers and listeners. And also, please check out Mayor Gray's holiday message. He notes that Hanukkah began last night, and it's a message that says Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and Happy Kwanzaa in your folders. Following the first source bill signing, the mayor will take questions from the press on legislation and other topics. Please, questions should only come from the press. We welcome everyone to come to these press briefings, but again, we limit questions to the press. Anyone from the public that would like to answer a question afterwards of the mayor, depending on time, you can ask the mayor or a staff member. And please welcome Mayor Vincent C. Gray.
Good morning. I want to thank everyone for being here for the signing ceremony of a very important bill, and that is the District of Columbia Workforce Intermediary Establishment and Reform of First Source Amendment Act, which is a mouthful. I'm sure you know the name as well as I do. Delighted to be here with Councilmember Michael Brown, at-large member who has played such an instrumental role in helping us to get to where we are today. Along with Chairman Kwame Brown, this truly has been an effort in which the council worked very closely together with the executive and the two members who really played, I think, the exceptional leadership role in getting us where we are today. Our Councilmember Michael Brown and Chairman Kwame Brown. The main, I was just mentioning you. The principal premise is that companies receiving taxpayers' funds should be expected to hire district residents, period. We are refocusing and strengthening our efforts in order to ensure the district residents are the immediate and primary beneficiaries of the money that's paid in taxes. And as such, the government of the District of Columbia must be a better steward of taxpayer funds in the contracting process here in the District of Columbia. I want to thank again Chairman Brown and Councilmember Michael Brown. Michael Brown, of course, chairs the Committee on Housing and Workforce Development. And between the two of them, I can't count the number of conversations that we've had about this. And, of course, you're going to hear from both of them shortly so they can talk about it as well. The Council and my administration have worked for almost a year working on this bill, almost from the day one, because it is something that both of them have considered at the top of their priority list, and I've considered it at the top of mine as well. I want to thank again all the council members who worked on this for the time, the effort, and investment of interest we've seen. And I think the resulting bill is one that we can all be proud of. This bill will ensure that the district residents are first to receive new jobs in our city. And I'm very delighted, and I know they are as well, to acknowledge that this bill creates an intermediary, a pilot program that will match job seekers and employers. Workforce intermediaries are a national best practice and have a successful track record of getting people back to work. And obviously we need people getting back to work. I'm delighted, too, that we were able to announce news yesterday that unemployment is on the decline in the District of Columbia. We were north of 11% for quite some time, one of the highest unemployment rates ever in the history of this city. We saw what is virtually a percentage point drop yesterday, and I believe we had almost 4,000, about 4,000 new jobs that have been created in the last 30 days in the District of Columbia as well. So that's good news. And this, of course, adds to our arsenal of tools to be able to continue to attack unemployment in the city. Again, the intermediary will play an important role in matching qualified employees with jobs. Training providers, including the Community College of the District of Columbia, will work with the government to find candidates and train them for more than just an immediate job, but hopefully for careers. Many employers have routinely told us that many of the 700,000 jobs here in the District of Columbia are job positions for which our residents do not qualify, and therefore that's the reason why they haven't been hired. I think most people know that only 30% of the jobs here in the District of Columbia are filled by people who actually live in the city. And given the fact that we cannot tax income at its source, it means that those dollars leave the District of Columbia every day, are taxed in some other jurisdiction like Maryland or Virginia, and those tax dollars then remain in those areas rather than in the areas where they were generated, especially involving taxpayer dollars that support contracts. In any event, we believe the tide is turning in this area, and we are in the midst of transforming our Department of Employment Services under the leadership of Lisa Mallory, who has been our director now for, I guess, about 9 or 10 months, and I think has done an exceptionally fine job of leading the agency. We all saw the quality of the Summer Youth Employment Program back in the summer, and I had a young person stop me on the street yesterday. She must have been about 17 or 18 years of age. We were at the Lincoln Theater, and there were two of them together. And she said she worked in the Summer Youth Employment Program, and now actually has a full year-round part-time job. And she said her mother wanted us to know that she thought it was the best Summer Youth Employment Program that she can remember. And no, I did not ask her the question about how she thought the program had gone. In any event, I think many of you will recall that this past summer we ran a pilot program also consistent with the spirit of this bill, in which we created a workforce incentive program. And again, I want to recognize our city administrator, Alan Liu, for the work that he did in helping us put that together. There were 5 or 6 construction modernization projects that we conducted over the summer. All those schools were modernized, and we created incentives for the contractors under the first source agreement. Rather than using the stick, we used the carrot in this instance. And in that instance, the program met its objective of increasing the number of hours worked by district residents by 35%. That translated into almost 800 D.C. residents who were hired out of the 1,900 folks who were employed across the city on those projects. Again, the First Source program we view as another job creation engine that the Department of Employment Services has revitalized and has at its disposal to be able to create jobs. I want to thank the Workforce Investment Council also, which is led by Mike Harold, who is a senior vice president. He's actually president of the Greater Washington PNC Banks. Josh Williams, who serves as the vice chair of that body, and Allison Gerber, who has come on board just a few months ago to lead the Workforce Investment Council. Again, we have an increasingly large arsenal available to us to be able to attack the issue of unemployment in the District of Columbia, and this bill will go a long ways towards creating more opportunities for district residents. So with that said, I want to bring up the 2 gentlemen who have played such an instrumental role in helping us get to where we are today. First of all, of course, the chairman of the Council of the District of Columbia, Chairman Kwame Brown.
Well, good morning. Good morning. Let me say to the mayor and his team that this is a historic day. As you mentioned, the administration is doing so much to make sure that those that are unemployed become employed, those that are underemployed become better employed, those that do not have the training or the skill sets should have every opportunity to get the skills in order to get a job to provide for their families. In January, there's clearly no secret that the mayor has mentioned jobs as being a top priority in his inaugural address. I mentioned jobs being the top priority in my inaugural address, and Councilmember Michael Brown has been on point since he's got on the council in terms of working to make sure that we do a better job of bringing jobs to our residents. This is the moment in which the District of Columbia gets things done. The executive branch, the legislative branch, working through to make sure that we deliver for the residents of the District of Columbia something that they have not seen in the history of this city, the toughest with incentives, jobs bill that will be signed today, Mr. Mayor, will go down in history in terms of our commitment, even at a time when unemployment seems to maybe be going down just slightly. The commitment of this government is to continue to make sure that every resident who is qualified has every opportunity to participate. And as being the author of the bill and co-introducing it with Councilmember Michael Brown and colleagues to step up to the table to make this a reality. And Councilmember Michael Brown and his staff should be commended. They've spent an incredible amount of time. And anytime you have the labor community not agreeing on anything, you know you're doing it right. And, you know, we can say that, laugh about it now, but I know no one was laughing earlier when everyone was meeting, trying to figure out that the objective is to get residents back to work. The objective is to ensure that as we use government dollars, that the beneficiary of those dollars are people that live in the District of Columbia, ensuring that those companies that step up to the table and participate actually have incentives at the end to continue to work with us. And I wanted to personally thank you, Mr. Mayor, because your administration has played a crucial role in working through this bill. And I think this is the example of what people expect. 12 months, an historic piece of legislation that's going to benefit all of the residents of the District of Columbia, this government getting things done. And I look forward to coming back to signing our ethics bill, too, that shows that this government is on the move of making sure things happen and we deliver. So to that, this is a great day, and most people don't even realize what's taking place right now. But after the bill is signed, the job is to continue to make sure it's enforced in a way in which every year we can come back and see how this bill has benefited and helped the lives of all the district residents and district companies. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. All right, please join me in welcoming at-large council member who chairs our Committee on Housing and Workforce Development, Councilmember Michael Brown.
Well, good morning. Good morning. I first want to commend the two gentlemen to my right and left with the environment that we are in related to politics up on Capitol Hill, around the country, here in our city. The two men that are leading our city have done a wonderful job. We are about to sign the largest jobs bill in this city's history. Give the chairman and the mayor a wonderful hand for the great leadership. And as we came together to start talking about what this legislation would look like, because we were going to revamp the first source law, you know, it's not always about credit, even though we certainly wanted to make sure that we came together, three minds came together, three staffs came together to try to put together a bill that made sense. Because it's not about credit for us, it's about getting people that are not working today to work tomorrow, and putting as many tools and as much ammunition as we can to make sure that folks have the ability to do that. Now, the new first source law is not going to be the silver bullet. It's not going to change the world tomorrow. But it's one additional step, a big step, to making sure that we're giving our folks that are out of work the best chance to succeed. And that, of course, includes everything from making sure that business feels incentive, that they feel a big partner in this, sure that the Department of Employment Services, and I want to congratulate again Lisa Malley for her leadership. Give her another hand, the Director of Department of Employment Services, for wonderful work. And making sure we're all working together, whether it's adult job training money, making sure we're keeping those programs funded, because if you're not trained, you can't get the job. Because keep in mind, that's the excuse the contractors used to use, is that D.C. did not have any skilled labor workforce. And let me bring out a couple things for you. This first piece, this is a list of 800 D.C. residents that are ready to work today right now. And some of them are applying and working at the Convention Center Hotel. I want to congratulate Hensel Phelps, what they have done, and we'll give them a hand in a second, because sometimes we criticize some of the companies in our city. But Hensel Phelps, when Chairman Brown and I authored the Convention Center Hotel Amendment about putting these historic numbers about hiring people to work on the Convention Center Hotel, a lot of our critics said can't be done, D.C. doesn't have enough skilled laborers. Well, not only did we ask them to achieve a certain number, a 60% goal, they are at 92%. So give Hensel Phelps a wonderful hand for doing what they needed to do. Because when you try to find D.C. residents that have the skilled labor, you can find them and they can get to work. If you really don't give the effort, then that's where we have problems. And now with the, as the mayor mentioned, our rate is going down, our unemployment rate is going down. That's a good thing, but we can't stop now. We have to continue to get more of our residents back to work. There's nothing more frustrating, and I'm sure the three of us and many of you have had the same conversations with people that are out of work. There's nothing more frustrating when they walk by construction sites and they see the license tags of the folks working these projects, not just the workers but also the contractors, are from every place but the District of Columbia. That has to be unacceptable to everyone. But also this bill, keep in mind, only 13% of the jobs in this city are construction jobs. So this is not just a bill about construction. It's about other industries in this city as well. I look forward to continue to work with you, Mr. Mayor, as we implement this great new law that you're about to sign. Mr. Chairman, thank you again for your leadership. Thank you very much.
Today would be the 21st, right? Yes. My kids say it's more than after Christmas. Not just the kids. All right. Of course, every place else. Else in America, this would now be the law of the jurisdiction. we now will send it for its 30-day review before the Congress of the United States of America, unlike any other jurisdiction in America. All right, again, I'm delighted to be able to have joined with Chairman Brown and with Councilmember Michael Brown to be able to do this. This bill to me is a is an example of the spirit of collaboration and cooperation that is what helps to move the city forward. Collaboration and cooperation between the legislative branch and the executive branch to get something done on behalf of our people. And we look forward, as soon as it becomes law, to implementing all the provisions of it. In the meantime, there are things that we will go forward with that we have the ability to do, and we will move forward, obviously, with those things at this stage. So, again, I want to thank the chairman. I want to thank Council Member Michael Brown. Yeah. I guess you could say this was a very colorful bill sound. 2 browns and a gray. All right. Are there any questions of the media on the bill itself, Mark?
It was really astounding to me when you gave the percentages for some of the branches of the D.C. government in terms of leading and hiring D.C. residents. Could you do that again for me? How many employees in the D.C. government are D.C. residents, especially police and fire? And then I have a question for the 2 council members.
Well, police. Fire, first of all, is 25%. Police is around 20%. One of the things that we have done, even leading up to this, is to establish an aggressive cadet program in the fire department. We started that cadet program now about 5 weeks ago. We have 34 young people, all of whom live in the District of Columbia. In fact, I went down for their first class and talked to them about the high schools they graduated from, et cetera. So that certainly is a way in which we can infuse more district residents into the fire department. The police department, we also have a cadet class. It's interesting also, Mark, because there are those who believe that there's a potential peril to having some of our police officers living in some of the neighborhoods where they may arrest people. And then, of course, there may be retribution, associated with that. So it's a little bit different with police, but that doesn't mean we're going to be deterred from trying to improve those outcomes.
What is the D.C. government total employees? Is it?
Do you know the total, Lisa? We'll find out for you.
And then I have a question for Mr. Brown, or either or both. Is it your policy to hire on your staff, committee or personal staff, council staff, only D.C. residents? Do you have anybody working in your office who is not a D.C. resident?
No, and let me also say, Mark, that I think the difference is you have leadership that is committed to do everything possible to make sure that D.C. residents are employed in the District of Columbia government, and I think this mayor has taken that to heart. And you can see that in the directors. You can see that in the deputy mayors that he's appointed. You can see that the people that he's put in his administration, that this question comes up over and over and over again, which shows that the movement of this government is to really actually care and make sure that we make a difference in hiring more D.C. residents.
I understand Congress can overturn personal policies, but I'm sure there are some people in some council staffs who don't live in the district. Could you send out, as the chairman of the council, a opinion saying that it is your firm belief that only district residents should be hired for council staff? What's the employee total for the council?
Well, Mark, let me say this. When it comes to your comment about council members and their staff, I believe that they all live in the District of Columbia. So, so when you say, sending out something when that's already exists.
You believe that every council member hires only D.C. residents?
Yes, that live. There's a part of their staff is D.C. residents. Absolutely.
Same with my office, and I think further to clarify some of those rules, I think the council rules, if someone does live outside the District of Columbia, they have a certain amount of time before they have to move into the city, or they have to leave their job. So, yes, my office is the same thing. And I want to also thank the mayor and the chairman. One thing I didn't mention, we stopped keeping count about how many meetings we had related to the first source law. We stopped at 40 meetings, and we continued. We wanted to make sure, whether it was labor, business, the advocacy groups, people that don't have work, we wanted to make sure it was practical as possible, and that's why I want to thank the staffs. My staff obviously worked extremely hard, the mayor's staff, the chairman's staff, because every time there was a meeting, they always had someone there, and that's what collaboration is all about, and that's why this bill was so successful as we walked it through the process.
Just to clarify, the pilot program in this bill, how is that different from one city, one matter? Is it that this narrowly focuses on companies that receive city assistance? Is there some overlap here?
Well, it does focus on the taxpayer dollars, and I do think that there's a lot of similarity. But I think one of the things that this does is, to now embody in the law of the District of Columbia, one city, one hire theoretically could disappear at any point without any legislative or statutory implications at all. In this instance, now you've got a bill that further strengthens the first source laws in the District of Columbia and imposes requirements on how taxpayer dollars will be used. Ms. Brazil.
I had two questions, one to the council members and one to you, Mr. Mayor. To the council members, were you, Mr. Brown, in response to Mark's question, making a categorical statement, your belief that there is no employee of the council who does not live in the District of Columbia?
No, Mark asked about my staff. He wanted to know, does everyone on my staff live in the District of Columbia? He wanted to know about the council member staff. Do they live in the District of Columbia? And the answer to that was yes. Everyone that I hired on my staff lives in the District of Columbia.
But he also followed up and asked you whether or not, as chairman of the council, you would issue a directive or a recommendation to your colleagues that they only hire D.C. residents. And so I wasn't clear. You were only saying that you're only certain as regards the individuals on your staff are D.C. residents?
Let me clear it up. In our next administrative meeting, I will, once again, I'll lay it out, and I will mention to the members that it is important to make sure that we have all of the staff live in the District of Columbia. That I'm committed to do. If that wasn't direct enough, I'll make sure that that is a direct yes mark, that I'll do that.
But as chairman of the council, you not only have your staff as chairman of the council, but you also supervise the staff of the secretary of the council, the budget office, and the IT office. Are you convinced that all those individuals live in the District of Columbia?
Everyone that I've hired since I've been there lives in the District of Columbia.
No,
and is meeting the requirements to live in the district. If you're asking me someone who's been here for 28 years, do they live in the District of Columbia? Somebody's been working on the council for 20 years. I would have to go back and get that information for you. Thank you.
You want to respond?
I had a question for Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
What about Mr. Brown? Did you want him to respond?
No.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brown already responded.
It's always been the issue that the first source program has been hindered because there has been problems regarding monitoring and enforcement. What does this bill do that will improve the monitoring and enforcement of the first source law in the District of Columbia?
I'll ask Ms. Mallory if she would come up. She's worked very closely with the staff of the council in this regard. One of the things we did was raise the threshold to $300,000, which I think then narrows to some extent the contract range, puts it at the higher end of the range of contracts in the city, which I think will reduce the number of contracts that have to be monitored. I think we found is it fairly true that those that are $100,000 and $200,000 don't typically result in a lot of people being hired, first of all, and certainly not a lot of district residents. So we are putting our emphasis now on the higher end contracts, especially those that are in the millions of dollars.
Good morning. Thank you. Actually, we instituted a database at the beginning of the year to start to capture information electronically from the employers to make sure that we can tabulate in real time and assist them. But more importantly, what this bill does is it gives us license to work in advance of the actual contracts being put in place, to think about hiring requirements and how they should be put forward in the package that will go to the Office of Contracting and Procurement. For us, we are going to have a database database and enhance our technology to be able to not only match the employers to the employees, but also to track it in real time and to provide a more customer-friendly and customer-focused service to employers to ensure that they are getting their needs met. So we will have data on the relationships, because it's a customer relationship management system that we're putting in place, the relationships that we have with DOES, the challenges that they're facing, and through One City, One Hire, we're going throughout the city to get more unemployed district residents into our system so that we can provide that information to employers so that they can no longer say that there are not qualified district residents available for employment.
If
This is the last question, Ms. Brazil.
If to get DC funding or benefits from the District of Columbia, they make a commitment to hire 51% of their employees be district residents, how do you know that that is in fact occurring? Is there any teeth in the bill that allows for enforcement, auditing records, or anything like that, or implementation?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, it does. I mean, it allows for us to look at the certified payrolls and also to allows us to bar them from receiving contracts for a period of 5 years.
Go ahead.
Alfonso and Gaston.
I mean, and I think actually the teeth is actually penalties in this bill too. Possible debarment. There are things that really say that if in fact you make promises and don't keep them, there are going to be consequences for those. And this is the first that we've seen in the jobs bill that's passed by this council and signed by this executive. And we have a director who is making sure that they're going to do an incredible job of terms of enforcement. And once we do the enforcement, I think that once people get debarred for lying, once people get penalized for lying, I think that, you'll see a change. And for a long time, there's been no penalties. And this is the first time that there will be penalties.
And keep in mind, it's also a political will question on the enforcement side. For the last 10 to 12 years that the first source law has been implemented, there were no letters that were sent out to companies. Since Mayor Gray became mayor, you've sent out now 22?
That's right.
22 letters to companies that are not compliant. So for the last 10 to 12 years, there's been no enforcement. And for the last year or so, there's been a lot of enforcement. So there's a political will issue, too, related to enforcement as well.
Thank you. All right, thank you all very much. That concludes our bill signing ceremony. And I want to again thank the chairman. I want to thank Councilmember Michael Brown for the work that they did on this and congratulate them on substantially moving the ball down the field. And again, I think this is emblematic of ways in which this government working together between the legislative body, the executive can move forward efforts on behalf of our 601,000 citizens. Thank you all very much.
He's on 22 letters already.
We didn't get to give away the ceremonial pin. You know what? The members are gone. We'll get one. We're going to give it to you, Lisa. Come on up and you get the ceremonial pin. How's that? I want to thank her for the work that she's doing. We set out at the beginning, in early January, and early February to make some real reform efforts around the Department of Employment Services, which some people were probably appropriately cynical about. But I think we've come a long ways in terms of the Summer Youth Employment Program, in terms of being an organization that is perceived as really about getting people to work rather than a place where you apply for unemployment or a place where you deal with workers' compensation. And now, the agency that will have principal responsibility for overseeing the implementation of this new law. We've also made a lot of progress as well on the workforce investment front. The Workforce Investment Council was essentially moribund. It has now been rejuvenated, has been fully populated with, we have 30, 35 members, members of the WIC, and the workforce intermediary that will emanate from this legislation, as well as our own commitment and recognition that it is a national best practice to do that. So you get the pen. All right, Lisa. Other questions?
Off topic?
Well, no, on another topic.
Yeah. My name is Martin DeCaro. I'm a reporter at WML Radio. It's nice to see you, Mayor. I'm working on an end-of-year piece on Occupy DC to wrap up what they've done over the last few months and looking forward. In your view, should the encampment at McPherson Square be allowed to stay there for as long as the protesters wish? And how are you going about trying to get money from the federal government to reimburse you on costs that the city has incurred for sanitation and other things?
Well, on the latter issue, perhaps you know that I have sent a letter to the National Park Service, to Director Jarvis, indicating that through the end of November we had incurred about $1.6 million in costs. And while the District of Columbia inherently is a place where protests, and other forms of expressing one's, views about policies in this country, more so than any place else, and we budget, for that. We, to my knowledge, has not been, certainly in the recent past, something as protracted as this. And as the longer that it goes on, the more likely we are to incur more costs. In these two instances, the federal government made the decision about the permitting for Freedom Plaza, and then if you stay under 500, you don't have to have a permit for McPherson Square. So we believe that that the federal government should share the cost with us, because we absolutely had no ability to have a say about what goes on there. Now, to that end, we've tried to be as supportive as we can. I certainly recognize the importance of being able to express one's views in, what purports to be a democratic nation. So we've worked as closely as we could with the occupiers. For the most part, we've had, I think, a pretty good relationship with them. There have been instances, for example, when there were 12 or 13 people who forcefully broke into the Franklin School. That was law-breaking, and they were arrested. And we have indicated that we support your efforts to demonstrate. We support free speech, obviously, because that's a constitutional right. On the other hand, we will not tolerate law-breaking, and people will be arrested. Now, we haven't made any hard and fast decisions about the future. We'll continue to consult with our federal partners on that.
A follow-up, I was going to ask you about how long you think they should stay there, because all the protesters I interview say they're going to stay there for as long as it takes, whatever that might mean. But on the issue of costs, what is that $1.6 million coming from?
Largely the police overtime issues, or police coverage for events involving Occupy DC. There are also, there are costs associated with the trash pickup, because there's been, larger amounts of trash in both instances. But the lion's share, 80 to 90% of it is for the costs of the Metropolitan Police Department.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I know you're still in the process of reviewing the ethics bill. At least that's what your office told me last night. What do you think about it so far? Do you like what you see?
Yeah, we are looking at the bill, but as you will recall, we sent forward a set of principles saying these are the things that we thought were important to include in an ethics bill, and I believe that the bill does fulfill what we thought was important in terms of those principles. So as a general statement at this stage, I'm happy with where it goes. Ms. Brazil?
Can I follow up on that question? Mr. Kwame Brown was on a program this morning highlighting the bill and saying that it provided for open and transparent government. And in that spirit, it'll be nearly a year since you had both your transition and inauguration committees. And to date, you have still refused to detail or provide an accounting for those two committees. And as you know, in the ethics bill, first there would be a cap on the amount that either of such committees could have raised, and there would be a public reporting of any monies raised. Could you tell us where things stand as regards a full accounting of your transition and inauguration committee expenses and expenditures, as well as in the past week, you've had several Christmas parties in your office on the first floor. Since last week, I have asked your staff to tell me who has been invited, the number of people being invited, how the parties are being paid for, and what the total cost is. And I have been, the information has just been refused. So, can you tell us where things stand regarding your transition and inauguration committees and accounting for the money raised and expended, as well as can you provide us some information on all these Christmas parties that you're having in your executive office?
We'll get you the information on the holiday open houses today.
That's what you said last
We'll
week.
get it to you today,
When today?
sometime today.
You knew I was coming to the mayor's press conference to ask this question. Mr. Mayor,
How would she know that?
because I told her that on Monday.
Oh, well, we'll get you the information.
Mr. Mayor, do you know?
You know what? I think I know how much it is, but I want to have it verified. This seems like this seems Shakespearean to me. Much ado about nothing.
You do? You do?
I do think that. Where do you see the numbers? Because I think I know what the numbers are.
Would you say the same thing about your inauguration and transition committee?
Ms. Brazil,
Those
Chris,
thousands of
excuse me. Chris, that was something you've been charged with the responsibility for.
Yeah.
You probably know better than I do.
Yeah, we have the audit complete. We're just looking at the final numbers. I would say by the middle of January, it'll be absolutely done.
Okay.
It's just a workload issue.
He answered the question.
Before you hire,
We can move on to the next
no,
question.
before you
Yes,
hire
we will.
Chris,
This is not your
before
press
you hire
conference. This is
Chris,
ours,
You
okay?
said you had an audit report already completed. That was months ago, 2 months before you hired Chris Murphy to be your chief of staff. Now he's saying that the audit is
I don't have a hearing
No, I said
impairment,
it
Ms.
is
Brazil.
done.
I don't have a hearing impairment.
Just say you're not going to give it up. Just say that. And that would be an honest response.
Ms.
We'll
Brazil.
get up with you later, and we're going to move on to the next question.
Mark?
I got a call yesterday from Congresswoman Norton, which is a rare occasion in itself. And she informed me, and I wondered what you're going to do about it, that John Boehner moved with suspension, Speaker of the House, had time to do this, to have a statue, a bust of Winston Churchill in Statuary Hall. Now, Mr. Churchill's mother was born in America, but he was not born in America. We have no representation with statues to perpetuate our non-existence in this country. What are you doing? The two statues, which are 4th and D, which are magnificent, which the D.C. government paid for, Pierre Lafana had problems with, but anyway, and Frederick Douglass. What are you doing personally so that we are represented in Statuary Hall? Especially, what is your reaction to what the Speaker did? The bill passed on suspension, no amendments. So there's a foreigner who is in Statuary Hall, but the residents of the nation's capital have no representation in terms of the statue. How can that be achieved so that we get this symbolically?
Well, I wasn't aware of this particular bill that you mentioned, Mark, but of course I think you know, and I'll state it to be clear, I think it's completely inappropriate to have not to have the District of Columbia represented there. It's one more indication of the second-class citizenship to which we are relegated in this country, and certainly then to add insult to injury, and that is to have someone who is not a citizen of this nation be memorialized in that way is completely offensive and completely inappropriate. And, you know, we've continued to try to make the case. We've tried to make the case on the larger issue of self-determination. You know, we're continuing to work on budget autonomy. We got close, or closer, I should say, as you well know, recently on that. And the three of us, Congresswoman Norton, myself, and Chairman Brown, decided that the price was just too high to pay to get something that we shouldn't have to pay for. And that is the ability to make our decisions, you know, about our budget. Same thing with legislative autonomy. If you're asking me if I've done anything in the last 2 or 3 months specifically on the statuary hall issue, no, nothing more than we had done previously.
Well, what will you do?
I think, Mark, we're going to continue. You know, we've got to fight these battles strategically as we possibly can. And I think what I want to continue to do is wage the battle on budget autonomy and legislative autonomy at this stage. They will be at the top of my priority list. That doesn't mean to the exclusion of the issue around Statuary Hall, but it does mean that that's where I'm going to focus my attention.
And just to cause some holiday trouble, there is a
More?
move afoot. There's just a move afoot to have a write-in campaign. You're the titular head of the Democratic Party for Hillary Clinton. The way the president has treated this place, where he got 93% of the vote, won't put the license plate on, won't come to the Wilson building, just invited. I wondered what your thoughts were about a write-in campaign for Hillary Clinton or a Hillary Clinton candidacy against Barack Obama.
I think, once again, it demonstrates that we live in a democracy.
Mayor, there was another situation on Metro yesterday. There was a train derailment and major delays. Were you happy with how Metro responded to that, and are you generally satisfied with the performance of Metro right now?
Well, I think one of the things that we know is that we've had, let's say over the last couple of years, we've had certainly we've had issues with Metro. We've had accidents and whatnot, but we also recognize that some of that has required investments that took far too long to get approval for in the capital improvements for the Metro system. We now, I think, have all the approvals. We'll get $150 million a year. $50 million from D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, respectively, and then $150 million from the federal government. So I think that's one of the things that will give us the wherewithal to make sure that we have the best Metro rail system in the world. No one would argue with that heretofore. We've had some problems in the last couple of years, certainly, but I think we'll be back on track with the investments that we're about to make.
One more quick one on Occupy DC. Did you get a response from the federal government at all?
Not yet. The letter just went out last week, so we have not. I would say we haven't gotten one yet. And if we don't get one, in a timely fashion, we'll follow up. This is media.
Is there precedent to be reimbursed?
It's media.
Is there precedent to be I'm fairly new in town, so forgive me. I'm from New York and New Jersey, and it's obviously the first time I've been to one of your briefings.
Excuse me, but this gentleman's talking.
Excuse me, sir. So is there precedent to be getting reimbursed for large expenditures like that when it comes to a federal decision to allow protesters to protest, but then you incur the costs? Have you been able, has the city been able to get money from the federal?
I don't know specifically about that issue, but we certainly know about inaugural costs. Inaugural costs, there's millions of dollars incurred by the city, much of which, of course, is the various police coverage that is required to conduct that event, in the quadrennium. So we believe that establishes a precedent to recognize that when there are extraordinary costs associated with an event in the District of Columbia, that the federal government ought to reimburse us.
You spending your holidays in town?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to. There's always a festive period in the District of Columbia, and there are few places that can match the District of Columbia on virtually anything. Thank you all.